Well, I've just been on a pretty long cruise. I've been away for 4 months on the boat, and the old girl's gone pretty well. I've had a little bit of problem. The boat's 20 years old now, and the motors are a bit older. Well, we don't wear skimpy bikinis. Hell, it frightens me when I take my shirt off. There's definitely no one pregnant here. This is motor sailing for old dudes. We do live on a boat, and we do cruise extensively along the Australian coast. Join us and visit some great destinations. Learn how to look after a boat and live off grid. It might even get you enthused to do the same thing. Hey, stay out there till you can't. Why do I like my little motors? The motors I run in this boat are Kubotas. They're V2203s, about 39 horsepower continuous. So they're not big engines, and I use the sail as virtually another engine. That gives me probably about another 30 horsepower. Why do I like diesel engines in boats? Well, you've got the option of really diesel engines. A lot of catamarans these days are putting outboards on. The downside of outboards, I don't think they get the power into the water all that well. The prop's usually up pretty close to the surface of the water and can tend to be aerated or cavitate a lot. I just like the fact that these motors are straight out through shafts, through a stuffing box or a dripless seal in this case, onto a skeg and onto a propeller, and it's a very simple way of doing it. They've been building power boats like that for hundreds of years, and it seems to work pretty well. It's all pretty standard basic stuff. You've got things like sail drives and S drives and forward facing props and all of these things. They're great, but just a bit more complicated, and something that can probably let you down when you don't really want to be let down. Diesel motors compared to outboards, I like the fact that diesel fuel is nowhere near as flammable as petrol. With the tanks and that they've got these days, petrol is pretty safe on boats, I must admit, but petrol in the bilge of a boat is a bomb waiting to go off. So any leaks, you've got to be really careful of any leak of petrol into your bilges, because the fumes coming off that are very explosive. Diesel, on the other hand, if it leaks into your bilge, it makes a mess, but it doesn't usually give off enough fumes to be flammable. The other thing I think is reliability. Diesel motors are quite reliable. As long as you keep the fuel clean, really there's not too much can go wrong with them. Fuel, I guess the biggest problem people have with diesel motors is dirty fuel, and a lot of that is from the boats not being used enough. The fuel sits, it gets water in the bottom of the tanks, and there's a bug that grows in this water, and that can block filters. So if you let your fuel get dirty, it can be a real problem. I always treat my fuel every time I fill up. I treat my fuel with a product called Fuel Doctor. It's a pretty good product. That keeps the molecules of water and diesel mixed and passes it through your system without blocking filters. So, touch wood, my fuel keeps pretty clean all the time. The reliability is a big part of it. I think diesels are a lot more reliable. Why I like these old Kubotas, they're a pretty standard old engine. They're gear driven. There's no belts. A lot of the new diesels are driving the injector pump through a belt. Well, a belt is just something that's going to let you down. These motors are gear driven. All the injectors are hydraulic, so they're driven off cams, off the camshaft. Not really much to go wrong with them. Kubota motors have got a good name for being very, very reliable. A lot of the newer motors, because they're trying to get pollution controls down and things like that, they're going to common rail diesel that has electronic injectors and then a computer to control the firing of the fuel into the motor. And electronics on a boat are the very first thing that will probably let you down. So having my motors the old style that are all mechanically driven, the fuel is mechanically injected into the engines. I think it's a lot better way to go. I'm not really big on these new electronically controlled diesel motors. So that's why I go with the Kubotas. The other thing about the Kubotas, spare parts, you can get them anywhere. Kubota tractors, they all have Kubota motors in them, and the dealership in Brisbane, Kubota Spare Parts, are fantastic. I can ring them there, they'll have parts sent to me overnight. So if you're broken down or you need a part somewhere, they can shoot it up overnight and you'll have the bit to fix your problem. So I really like these motors I'm running in this boat. They've done 7,000 hours now, so they're starting to get a bit old, but the motors are still running very well. Touch wood, they're not using any oil, they're not rattling, they're still running pretty well and still pretty tight. The oil pressures are still up, so I think they've got a bit more life left in them. It's just the little things around them, water pumps and fuel lift pumps. I've replaced, on this trip, I've replaced the saltwater pumps before I started. I replaced the fuel lift pumps while I was away, and just in the last port I was in Mooloolaba, I had to replace a water coolant pump on the front of the motor. So that's all I've had to do on this trip, but apart from that, the old girls run pretty well. Anyway, give a bit of thought to what sort of motor you want to put in your boat. If you're building a boat, I'd swear by the Kubotas. They really are a very standard, reliable type of motor. When I say Kubota, they need to be Marinised. Kubota don't make a marine engine, they make a standard engine. Kubota would have to marinise. I think Dicon used to do it here in Brisbane. I think they're out of business. Nanny diesels are based on Kubota motors, and also Better Diesel, I think, are based on Kubota motors, and I think they're some of the brands you could look. There's probably others as well, but look, yeah, I just like the fact that these motors are mechanically operated and very simple to work on. You don't really have to be a rocket scientist to work on these motors. They are quite basic and easy to work on. If you've got an electronically controlled diesel, the first thing you need to do is be a bit of a computer guru to understand how the brain works, how the computer chip works that drives all of these electronic injectors. So yeah, I like these older style motors. Main thing is to get out there and use your boat. It's the best thing you can do. Diesel motors, any motor, but diesel motors especially, I suppose, hate sitting around doing nothing. And if you use your boat, usually your motors will be kept in better nick. And do your pre-start checks. If I do a trip down the coast, I've come from Mooloolaba down here, the motors have only run for 4 hours, but half an hour ago I got down to my engine rooms, checked all my levels, my oil level, my coolant level, my gearbox levels, have a look in the bilge, see if there's any water leaking down there. If you do this every time you stop, you'll keep on top of problems that might be arising with your motor. So do your pre-start checks, be religious on that, I am. Hey listen, I hope this helps you get out and enjoy your boat. Don't forget, stay out there till you can't. Cheers dudes.